So the Diddy trial continues, day 13, which was Monday, June 2nd. And we have Mia back on the stand. Mia is the former assistant to Diddy, a former employee of his who gave compelling testimony, some would say, the previous week, where she discussed the abusive work environment that she worked in with Diddy, and she also made allegations of sexual abuse and rape against Diddy. Now, the defense went in on her on last week, and I did a video talking about it once. I did like an update where I talked about, hey, look, this is sort of showing a relationship that is not really, I find it to be somewhat spurious, some of the things that she's saying. And of course, there's that fine line you got to walk between being someone commenting on this as well as the defense team going after her. You know, you don't want to victim shame her or just right away assume that she's lying about everything. That's just not fair. We know that from the whole Me Too movement, and like we need to be more mindful of how these things play out. We also had the forensic psychologist come on, that was like a week or so ago, and talk about some of the rationale for why victims often stay in these relationships and how they are psychologically affected and how they are bound to their tormentors often. And that was brought up. And a lot, you know, that's true. However, we're dealing with a legal case, and I want to remind people that's what we're dealing with, and we're going to need to start to see some real evidence of things. And I don't think that Mia so far has produced any real evidence of anything. So with that said, time to talk the Diddy trial. Today is Tuesday. It's day 14 of the trial. I'm going to do a recap of that, but I want to talk about more Mia's testimony yesterday and why I'm saying what I'm saying. Time to talk. Let's get into it. But first, what I found interesting was Bill Maher. I don't know if you've seen this. Bill Maher, in Real Time with Bill Maher, HBO, made a video in his New Rules segment. If you watch Bill Maher at the end of his broadcast, there's a section called New Rules where he talks about all these things and kind of gets into other, political stuff or social commentary on things, and, gives us a new take on things and how we should be examining things and how we should be looking at things. So he did a New Rules thing regarding Me Too and women in these situations. And I want to talk about it because I posted a video about this, again, last week when Mia gave her testimony and the defense went after her. And Bill is pretty much echoing that similar sentiment. So let's get into it right now. And I want to just pay attention to what you say. If you haven't seen this is something definitely to watch. Let's get into this really quick.
New rule, the Me Too movement, which turns 8 years old in October, needs an actual new rule. An amendment, if you will. Now, I'm sure with all the important world-changing news that's going on lately, very few of you have had time to pay attention to the P. Diddy trial going on in New York. I'm joking, of course. The moon could crash into the earth, and that trial would still be the first thing I'd click on, and I'm sure you're no different. I gotta say, this Diddy is a really hard guy to figure out. He's allegedly so jealous of Kid Cudi just dating Cassie that he firebombs his car, and it wasn't even a Tesla. But then he pays another man so we can watch the guy right in front of him. Love is complicated. And that's where we must start. We need to keep two thoughts in our head at once. One, Diddy is a bad dude, really bad, like the worst thing in rap since Hammer Pants. And we should lock him up and throw away the baby oil. And two, things have changed enough so that moving forward, the rules should be, if you're being abused, you gotta leave right away. Now, I completely understand why in the past women often did not do that. I understand, as counterintuitive as it seems, why an abused woman would send complimentary texts or emails to her abuser after the abuse. In an era where women felt for good reason that OG predators like Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein would never be held accountable, why not at least get something out of it? These men were surrounded by all sorts of enablers, skeptical cops, assistants who lured women into unsafe spaces, cowards who knew what was going on but didn't dare expose the person who signed their paycheck. In that scenario, it was not illogical for an abused woman to say, well, if I can't get justice for my pain, can I at least get a receipt, a coupon? But a lot has changed. Cosby and R. Kelly went to prison. Harvey Weinstein is going to die in prison. Larry Nassar is serving 175 years. Post-Me Too, reporting of sexual crimes is way up, as is the percent of women who say they're now more likely to speak out if victimized. And many states have changed laws making it easier for victims to come forward. We're not in the no one listens to women or takes them seriously era anymore. Operators are actually standing by to take your calls. And I'm aware that it can be difficult to leave an abusive relationship. Most of what I watch on TV is the Lifetime channel. But this should be society's new grand bargain. We take every accusation seriously, but don't tell me any more about your contemporaneous account that you said to two friends 10 years ago. Tell the police right away. Don't wait a decade. Don't journal about it. Don't turn it into a one-woman show. And most importantly, don't keep him. Your only contemporaneous notes about what he did should be the police report. It's not victim shaming to expect women to have the agency to leave toxic relationships. Quite the contrary, to not expect that is infantilizing them. If Diddy walks free, it will be because his lawyers can point to an endless stream of text from Cassie expressing what's often called enthusiastic consent to their sex life. If you're Me Tooing someone, it doesn't help your case if you texted him, "Me too. I just want it to be uncontrollable." If you want us to think you weren't always ready to freak off, don't write, "I'm always ready to freak off." Or wish we could have FO'd before you left. You know, one sign you're pretty comfortable with something is when you call it by its initials. Part of the allure of the music industry is you want to be a star. It's why someone moves to Miami from Kansas. It's why they built a freeway from Orange County to LA. It's why someone might run away from their small town pastor into the arms of Father Funk. And music is, to begin with, highly sexualized. Magic doesn't strike at the office. It strikes in the studio at 3 a.m. when you're high as a kite. Of course a freak-off breaks out. Finally. But if we're going to have an honest conversation about abuse, we also have to have an honest conversation about what people are willing to do for stardom. If you want a #1 record on the chart so bad you'll take a #1 in the face, some of that is on you. And if you're doing it for love, well, come on. Oprah and Dr. Phil and every podcaster in the world have done 1 million shows by now about how abuse is not love and abusers don't change. If it happened once, there will be more of it. To pretend otherwise is like seeing one ant in the sink and thinking, oh, it's probably just the one.
Okay, so I edited the actual clip down a little bit so we could just speed through it a little bit and get to the more main points. But this is what I've been saying. I pointed out the fact last week that, I did a video where I talked about the people who stood around and watched a lot of this take place were cowards. People who, you can't convince me that every single person was under his thumb and was so in love with the money and the lifestyle and the job that they couldn't basically pull out and go, okay, yeah, I'm kind of not with this. This guy's beating women and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. I'm out. You would just let that happen? Cowards. As far as Mia goes, and let's just go ahead and get into some of, there's a whole bunch of stuff. She was back, she talked about a dream that she had. She sent a text or, hey, love you. Had a dream the other day where I was stuck in an elevator with R. Kelly and you saved me. Oh, okay. This is the guy who traumatized you and, but if, okie dokie. All right. And this is after she'd stopped working for him, after she was done, when she was fired, right? So this whole thing about forced labor, right? She was actually upset about being laid off, and the defense got that out of her, right? And she wanted to work for Diddy. Pierce, she wanted to be in that life. She wanted to. She sold herself to the devil the moment she got there, and she did what she did. Now, the thing I have to question is, if you sign on to work for Bad Boy, you sign on to work for Diddy. At what point do you realize, man, this is much more than just long hours and a slave driving boss, this guy's out of his loop. At what point, right there, before the psychological traumatization and brainwashing and all the psychological stuff that they bring in, when women are abused and victimized and they hold on to their tormentors, before all that happened, when you realize this job ain't worth it, why stay? What is the rationale for staying in the very beginning? I need the job. I need the money. I want the fame. I like drinking Ciroc for free. I like being flown to Bali. I like all this stuff. Because that, my friends, needs to be addressed, because we don't seem to be addressing that. We seem to just overlook the fact that this guy was a media mogul and a billionaire and people wanted to work with him, period. If this was a regular record label, some regular dude, she'd have quit the moment she realized, like people quit jobs all the time, even when they need the jobs. People have left jobs that they felt either threatened by the boss, or the boss was too hard to work for, or was just a a-hole to begin with, or whatever. The conditions weren't right. People have left jobs all the time when they needed the job and they were desperate and they weren't about to sell their souls. People are selling their souls to work for people like this because there's a benefit to it. There's a return, and they want that return. So going back to, what I said last week and what Bill confirmed here, or Bill also sort of espoused on, is the idea that take some responsibility for the fact that you know what you're getting into. This wasn't the Cassie situation where it was a physical relationship, an emotional relationship, a love relationship that you got into with somebody, and over time the abuse added up to the point where you couldn't leave, which is what the supposed thing happening to Cassie is, right? Again, I disagree with all of that. Over a 10, 11-year stretch, I think there's some part of that is true. But again, by her own text messages, can't wait to freak off, can't wait to do this. I think she had her own natural thing going on. I don't think it was just she was hypnotized and only doing this to please Diddy. In this case with Mia, she was an employee. She could have left early on and be like, I'm out. Like, I'm not having some dude yell at me. I'm not going to watch some guy beat someone up, my best friend. Like, she could have been out. She didn't say anything for a while. She didn't say anything to the federal prosecutors, until after Cassie had bought her case, after Diddy's home had been raided. It's just she's doing birthday videos, shout out videos to Diddy, expressing how much love and blowing kisses, and he's a big inspiration. And then the rationale, and this is after she worked for him, because while she was working for him, supposedly, or this whole thing about Instagram being, she only posted things that were, job related. In other words, you had to kind of kiss the boss's butt in order to maintain your position, and you had to do these things, otherwise there were consequences. But this is after she wasn't chained to a desk. It's not true. And I want to wrap this up by making the point. None of this is meant to suggest that there's no such thing as victims and that these things aren't terrible. These things don't happen. The point here is what Bill pointed out. We don't live in an era where you needed to suffer that abuse for 10 years, 11 years, for a couple of years on a job. You didn't tell anyone. There's no exchange, because the defense brought this up as well. There's no exchange with her and any family or friends speaking of this horrible work conditions. Even early on, you would think there'd be something where she's like, yo, this guy's nuts. Yeah, I started the job last week. This dude's crazy. He wants me to do this. He wants me to fly here and then there. And he wants me to be up till 2 a.m. to get IHOP or whatever the situation is, right? The whole Prince situation, escaping the Prince party at 2 a.m. with Cassie. None of this stuff is documented. There's no evidence so far to her testimony. Cassie, on the other hand, obviously had that video from the hotel, the Intercontinental Hotel, where Diddy is clearly abusing her and physically whooping her ass. And that set a certain tone for his character, for the jury to have that in their mind, like, this guy's horrible. So everything you heard after that about him with relation to Cassie and that relationship, it kind of made sense. All the puzzles pieces fit together, right? Every time you heard about the abuse against Cassie. This is an employee who so far has sat silent, hasn't said anything. He's continued working for the man, and even after working for the man, was continuing to praise him and shower him with love and affection on social media. Okay, and then when she lost her job, she made $400,000. Well, she made $200,000. Half of it went to her attorney. She got $200,000 out of it, and there's no evidence of any type of abuse or anything. It's just her word as a disgruntled employee, and I think we need to keep that in mind. Not to make this an emotional thing where we just automatically want to side with her because there's some emotional thing happening. We need to think of this from a legal standpoint. Is there evidence that she was sexually assaulted and raped and all these other things from Diddy? Do we see evidence of bruise marks and photos of this, and she had a computer thrown at her and all these different things? We don't have that. We don't have text message exchanges. We don't have anything with her complaining or making any qualms about any of her work-related stuff until later on. And after she worked for Diddy, she was still praising him and still sending messages of love. I'm sorry, that's not consistent with the allegations that she's making that took place years ago. Time to Talk podcast. Let me know in the comments below if you're keeping up with this. Let me know your thoughts on this. Again, not an emotional thing, more of a legal thing. Is Mia's testimony, do you believe her? This is definitely assassinating her character and her credibility. And that was the defense's job. And the defense is doing their job. Remove the emotion from it. Think of it from that standpoint. The defense is doing their job. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe if you've not yet subscribed for more on this and everything else and whatever. All right, subscribe to people who've already subscribed. I appreciate you. I'll see you in the next time we talk. Peace.